What if I told you the biggest difference between the rich and the poor isn't how much money they have, but what they're taught about money from the beginning? Most people grow up learning to earn, spend, and survive. They're taught to work hard, save a little, avoid risk, and hope stability leads to success. But that system was designed for security, not wealth, and it quietly limits how far someone can go. Wealthy families teach a completely different mindset. Instead of trading time for money, they learn how to make money work for them. They're introduced early to concepts like ownership, investing, and building systems that generate income without constant effort. Money isn't seen as something to hold onto, it's a tool to multiply, a resource to deploy strategically. Another key difference is how risk is understood. Poor and middle-class households are often taught to avoid risk at all costs, which can lead to missed opportunities. The wealthy, on the other hand, are taught to study risk, manage it, and use it. They understand that growth requires calculated moves, not blind safety. This shift alone can change the trajectory of a person's financial life. Perhaps most importantly, the rich teach their children to think long-term. Instead of focusing on immediate income, they focus on building assets that grow over time: businesses, investments, intellectual property. The goal isn't just to make money today, but to create systems that produce wealth for years, even generations. In the end, it's not just about money, it's about mindset, strategy, and education. What you're taught shapes how you see opportunities, how you handle money, and what you believe is possible. Change what you learn, and you can change the entire direction of your financial future. Because most people grow up learning how to earn money, they're trained to rely on effort as their primary source of income. The focus is on getting a job, working consistently, and increasing pay over time. It's a system built around exchanging time for money, where income is directly tied to how many hours you put in. While it can provide stability, it often creates a ceiling that's hard to break through. The wealthy, on the other hand, are taught how to create money. They learn early that income doesn't have to come from constant labor, it can be generated through systems, assets, and leverage. Instead of asking, "How can I work more?" they ask, "How can this work without me?" That shift changes everything because it removes the direct link between time and income. They're also taught to think in terms of ownership rather than participation. Instead of only earning from a paycheck, they build or acquire things that produce income: businesses, investments, and scalable ideas. These assets continue to generate returns long after the initial effort is made, creating momentum that compounds over time. Another difference is how value is approached. Most people are taught to be valuable workers, while the wealthy focus on creating value at scale. They build systems that serve many people at once, allowing income to grow beyond individual effort. This is where true wealth begins to separate from simple earnings. In the end, earning money keeps you in the game, but creating money changes the game entirely. It opens the door to freedom, flexibility, and long-term growth, where income is no longer limited by time, but expanded by strategy. Poor and middle-class families often teach a clear, familiar path: go to school, get a good job, and work hard. It's a blueprint built on stability and survival, a way to ensure bills are paid and life stays predictable. For many, it works. It provides structure, discipline, and a sense of security in an uncertain world. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that path. Education and hard work are valuable, and they can absolutely lead to a comfortable life. But the limitation is that this model focuses on maintaining income, not multiplying it. It prepares people to participate in the system, not to control or expand beyond it. Rich families, however, introduce a completely different framework. They still value education, but they emphasize financial education just as much: understanding money, markets, and how systems create income. Instead of preparing their children to depend on a paycheck, they prepare them to build and own income-producing assets. They also shift the focus from effort to strategy. Rather than asking, "How hard can you work?" the question becomes, "What can you build that works for you?" This leads to thinking about businesses, investments, and scalable opportunities that grow over time, instead of relying solely on personal labor. In the end, both paths require discipline, but they lead to very different outcomes. One teaches you how to earn a living, while the other teaches you how to build wealth. And that difference, over time, can shape an entirely different future. Rich kids learn early that money isn't just something you spend, it's something you deploy. Instead of seeing money as the end goal, they see it as a tool with a job to do. Every dollar has a purpose, and that purpose isn't just consumption, it's growth. This mindset shifts money from something temporary into something productive. Instead of asking, "What can I buy?" they're taught to ask, "What can this money become?" That single shift changes how decisions are made. Purchases are no longer just about satisfaction in the moment, but about whether that money could be working somewhere else, generating more income, more opportunities, or more leverage. They're introduced early to the idea of putting money into things that pay them back, whether it's investments, businesses, or assets that produce cash flow. Over time, they begin to see money as something that can multiply itself, not just something that gets used up. This creates a habit of thinking beyond immediate gratification. Meanwhile, most people are conditioned to view money as something that comes in and goes out, earn it, spend it, repeat. Without the concept of deployment, money never gets the chance to grow. It's constantly being consumed instead of being positioned to produce. In the end, the difference isn't just what they do with money, it's how they think about it. When money becomes a tool instead of a reward, every financial decision starts to build momentum, turning small amounts into something much bigger over time. Most people are taught to trade time for money. You work an hour, you get paid for that hour, and if you stop working, the income stops too. It's a direct exchange, and while it can provide stability, it also creates a limit. There are only so many hours in a day, which means there's always a ceiling on how much you can earn. Rich kids are taught to think beyond that equation. Instead of relying only on effort, they learn to build systems, structures that can generate income without the constant presence. The focus shifts from, how much can I work, to, what can I create that keeps working even when I'm not? That's where the real separation begins. These systems can take many forms: investments that grow over time, businesses that operate with teams and processes, or assets that produce consistent cash flow. The key idea is that once the system is built, it doesn't require the same level of ongoing effort to produce results. It starts to run independently, creating income in the background. Over time, this approach builds leverage. Instead of one source of income tied to one person's time, there are multiple streams working simultaneously. This not only increases earning potential but also creates flexibility, because income is no longer dependent on being constantly active. In the end, trading time for money keeps you busy, but building systems creates freedom. It allows income to continue flowing whether you're working, resting, or focusing on the next opportunity, turning effort into something that lasts far beyond the moment. The poor are taught to get paid. From an early age, the message is clear: go out, find work, and earn a steady income. Success is often measured by the size of a paycheck or the security of a job. Money is viewed as something you receive in exchange for your time and effort, and to keep it coming, you have to keep showing up. It creates a cycle where income is always tied to activity, and stopping means the flow stops too. The rich, however, are taught to own. Ownership changes the entire relationship with money, because instead of depending on someone else to pay you, you position yourself on the side where value is created and distributed. Owning a business, shares in companies, or income-producing assets means you're no longer just a participant, you're a stakeholder. You benefit from growth, from performance, and from the systems that generate value over time. Because when you own, you don't just earn money, you influence where it flows. Money moves through businesses, markets, and systems every single day, and ownership places you in the path of that movement. Instead of waiting to be paid, you earn from the activity itself: sales being made, investments growing, or assets producing income. It's a shift from chasing money to positioning yourself where money is already circulating. This is where leverage begins to take shape. When you're only earning, your income is limited to your own output. But when you own, your results can expand beyond your personal effort. A business can serve thousands of customers. An investment can grow without daily involvement. Assets can produce income repeatedly from a single decision. Over time, this creates momentum that's difficult to achieve through earning alone. It also changes the questions you ask. Instead of focusing on raises, promotions, or hourly rates, the focus becomes acquisition and growth. What can I own that increases in value? What can I build that continues to produce? What can I position today that pays me tomorrow? These are the kinds of questions that lead to long-term wealth, because they prioritize control and scalability over short-term income. In the end, getting paid gives you income, but ownership gives you influence, leverage, and sustainability. It allows you to move from simply working within the system to actually benefiting from how the system operates. And over time, that difference can turn ordinary effort into lasting wealth. Rich kids aren't punished for failing, they're encouraged to learn from it. From an early age, failure isn't treated as something to avoid at all costs, but as part of the process of figuring things out. Instead of being told, don't mess up, they're often guided to ask, what did this teach me? That simple shift removes fear and replaces it with curiosity. In many environments, failure is tied to embarrassment, grades, or consequences, so people grow up trying to play it safe. They avoid risks, stick to what they know, and choose paths where mistakes are less visible. But that safety can come at a cost. It limits growth, creativity, and the willingness to try something bigger. Over time, the fear of losing becomes stronger than the desire to win. Wealth-oriented mindsets flip that perspective. Failure is seen as feedback, not defeat. Every mistake carries information: what didn't work, what needs adjusting, where the opportunity really is. Instead of stopping, the approach is to refine, improve, and try again with better insight. That's how experience compounds, turning small losses into long-term advantages. Because every mistake teaches something school never will: how to navigate uncertainty, make decisions without guarantees, and recover when things don't go as planned. These are real-world skills that don't come from memorization, but from action. They build confidence, resilience, and the ability to operate in situations where there is no clear roadmap. In the end, avoiding failure might protect you in the short term, but learning from it prepares you for the long term. When failure becomes a lesson instead of a label, it stops being something to fear and starts becoming one of the most valuable tools for growth and success. And here's the truth: most people were never taught these lessons. Not because they lack intelligence, discipline, or ambition, but because the environment they grew up in didn't include this kind of thinking. What you're exposed to early on becomes your normal. If no one around you talks about ownership, investing, or building systems, then naturally, those ideas never become part of your decision-making process. People don't reject these concepts, they're simply never introduced to them in the first place. Not because they can't learn them, but because no one ever showed them. Knowledge has to be passed down, demonstrated, or discovered. And for many, financial education isn't something that was modeled at home or taught in school. So instead, people follow the blueprint they've seen: work, earn, spend, repeat. It's not a lack of potential, it's a lack of exposure. You can't apply what you've never seen in action. Most systems are designed to prepare people to function, not to expand. School teaches you how to follow structure, meet expectations, and perform within defined rules. Jobs teach you how to be consistent, reliable, and productive. These are valuable skills, but they don't always include understanding how money actually moves, grows, and multiplies. So people can become highly skilled in earning without ever learning how to build. This creates a gap that many don't even realize exists. You might feel like you're doing everything right, working hard, staying disciplined, trying to save, yet still not seeing the level of progress you expected. That's often because the game you're playing was never designed to create wealth, only stability. And without new information, it's easy to assume that more effort is the only answer. But the moment these ideas are introduced, something shifts. You begin to see money differently, not just as something you earn, but as something you can direct, grow, and multiply. Opportunities that once seemed invisible start to become clear. You start asking different questions, making different decisions, and noticing patterns you didn't see before. Awareness doesn't just inform you, it expands what you believe is possible. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's where change begins. Because now, you're no longer limited by what you weren't taught, you're guided by what you choose to learn next. You realize that your starting point doesn't define your outcome. With the right knowledge and mindset, you can build skills that were never handed to you and create a path that looks completely different from the one you were shown. In the end, it's not about blame, it's about responsibility moving forward. You may not have been taught these lessons early, but you have the ability to learn them now. And that shift, from unconscious limitation to intentional growth, is where real transformation begins. But once you understand this, everything changes. It's like a switch flips in the way you see money, opportunity, and even your own potential. What once looked like a straight path, work, earn, spend, suddenly feels limited. You begin to realize there are entirely different ways to operate, ways that aren't dependent on constant effort just to move forward. You stop chasing money as if it's something outside of your control. The urgency to make more every single day starts to fade because you recognize that income doesn't have to come only from effort. Instead of running after opportunities, you begin to think about positioning, placing yourself where value is created and captured consistently. And that's where the shift happens. You start building systems that create money. Not just working harder, but thinking smarter. Systems that can operate with or without you. Whether it's a business with processes in place, investments that grow over time, or assets that generate ongoing income, the focus moves from activity to structure. You're no longer just participating, you're designing how money flows into your life. This changes how you use your time. Every hour is no longer just about earning, it's about building something that can keep producing beyond that hour. Effort becomes front-loaded. You put in work to create or acquire something, and then that thing continues to work for you long after. Over time, those systems begin to stack, creating multiple streams that reinforce each other. It also changes your decisions. You start asking different questions. Will this grow or just cost me? Does this move me closer to ownership or keep me dependent? Is this temporary income or something that can compound? These questions guide you toward choices that build momentum instead of just maintaining motion. In the end, you don't just earn money, you engineer it. You move from reacting to income to creating it with intention. And that's when everything truly changes, because you're no longer limited by how much you can do in a day, you're empowered by what you've built to keep working for you over time. If you want to think like the wealthy, you have to be willing to learn what they learn, even if no one around you is on that same path. It often means stepping outside of familiar conversations and private patterns, choosing growth over comfort. The way you think about money, risk, and opportunity doesn't just change on its own, it evolves based on what you consistently expose yourself to. You have to seek knowledge intentionally. That means learning about ownership, investing, systems, and how money actually moves in the real world. It's not always taught in traditional spaces, so you have to go where that information lives: books, experiences, mentors, and environments that challenge how you currently see things. Over time, what once felt unfamiliar starts to become second nature. Even if no one around you understands it at first, that's part of the process. Growth can feel isolating in the beginning because you're thinking differently, asking different questions, and making decisions that don't always match the norm. But that separation is often a sign that you're expanding beyond old limits, not that you're on the wrong path. The key is consistency. Learning once isn't enough. You have to keep building on it, applying it, and refining your understanding. Small shifts in knowledge can lead to big changes in behavior, and those changes, repeated over time, can completely reshape your financial direction. Subscribe for more strategies they don't teach in school, because your financial future depends on what you learn next. The information you choose to absorb today will influence the decisions you make tomorrow, and those decisions will determine where you end up. So if you want a different outcome, it starts with learning something different.